Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Magic with Zuby. My name is Zuby, and if you're brand new to this show's all about a little well-known card game called Magic the Gathering. On today's episode, we brought you your Commander Mechanic, Chris, aka the Commander Mechanic, came on, and we discussed tuning up decks, a hell of a lot of Commander talks and D&D, and everything else in between. I will say, like, the first 10 to 15 minutes is about the housing market and what it's like to own a house. So I apologize for that. But hey, if you're interested, hey, cool. And then we just get into a shit ton of Magic talk, which was awesome. So before we begin, I've got some announcements to make. Ooh. If you want to help support the show, you can help support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/magicwithzuby. You can also find this show on YouTube. Should you be listening to it if you want to watch moi here. You can also find this on your favorite podcast app out there, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, all that stuff out there. Like literally almost probably every podcast app now, because it's just out there. And if you're watching the video, you can see my kitty cat Prim Prim, who won't leave me alone. And we are also sponsored by cardsphere.com, the best place to buy, trade, and sell your Magic singles and sealed product. And we also have a new sponsor. We have Alter Sleeves is a sponsor of ours as well too. You can use coupon code MagicWithZuby to help support the show. And I am also in the works of getting our own Magic with Zuby Alter Sleeves. It's probably going to take another month or two for that to happen, but it is in the works. I'm working on a design. I've got the artists in mind to that I want to make them and all that stuff. So in the next month, hopefully, before the end of the year, because I can't believe we've only got a couple months left of the year. We've got August, September, October, November, December. We got 5 months left already. So hopefully before the end of the year, I'm going to get some of Magic with Zuby Ultra Sleeves, and I'm going to get those out to you. Maybe I'm going to try to do some giveaways on Ultra Sleeves as well, too, before then. I'm also in the works of getting some Patreon exclusive tokens of Magic with Zuby. So if you want some of those Patreon exclusive tokens, sign up for my Patreon. I don't know what tier yet. I've got I just saw the rough sketch of what the token is going to look like, and I'm super excited about it. I'll give you a hint. It's one of my favorite commanders. So that's going to be coming soon within the next month, I'm hoping. And when I get those tokens, they are going to go some Patreon stuff. So if you want some exclusive tokens, sign up for my Patreon, and boom, there you go. And then that is it for brand new announcements, I think. I think that's about it. So without further ado, let's welcome your Commander Mechanic, Chris. Hey everybody, Zuby here, and I am with your Commander Mechanic, Chris. Welcome to the show.
Zuby. Hey, folks. You're doing my intro for me. I love
yes. It. So, real quick, are you actually like a mechanic? Like, do you mess with cars or anything like that, or?
That was the number one question I received when I started up the channel.
Yeah.
I did like a 2,500 subscriber Q&A, and the most received question I had is, are you an actual mechanic? And the answer is no, I'm not an actual mechanic. I am strictly a commander mechanic. The only thing that I'm putting up on blocks is your commander deck, not your car.
Okay, well, no, I figured you may have been more like a, what do you call it, like a passion or something, like not that was your job, but like I've got a friend who's a gearhead, and he's in IT like I am, but he's one of those guys, he knows every single thing about cars you can imagine.
Yeah. No, and I'm sure, much like he can take apart an engine or a vehicle from bumper to fender, I can do that with a Magic deck. That's as far as my mechanical skills go.
Okay, well, interesting. Well, I wanted to bring you on. It's actually been a long time coming. You've been on my radar. Just with everything. I mean, we were just talking about friggin' Flood that happened earlier this year. And then if you follow me on Twitter, you know that I had another one this week. And thank God we opted for everything waterproof. Because holy shit, because if it was not waterproof, I'm like, dude, we were originally gonna record that day, but I had to cancel, only because like, dude, I was freaking the fuck out, like holy shit, I don't want to go through this again.
No kidding. I mean, with what you went through earlier this year, I don't blame you at all. I'm just glad everybody's safe.
Oh yeah, no, I am too. It was just, yeah, it was. That's all I'm gonna say. It's just, yeah, it is what it is. So we're gonna have to end up getting our drain field replaced, which is gonna cost a lot of money, but at least we're not having to like be uprooted out of our house. Like, we'll figure out a way to get that done, get it paid for, and all that shit. But the thing that sucks about it is it's gonna take at least 1 to 2 months for them to even replace it because of county permits.
No kidding.
Because they have to come out and test our soil for whatever the fuck, and then they'll take their sweet ass time to approve the permit, and because the actual work only takes a day to get done.
Right.
But it's all just a bunch of bureaucratic red tape. They just gotta sucks, but
find out whose palms you gotta grease to move it along, right?
Oh, dude, it's fucking county.
Oh wow. I know, like I personally just bought a house in probably one of the worst times in the past like decade to buy a house, and that has been an ordeal in itself as well. I don't know if you're familiar with what the housing market looks like, but
I mean, I've seen it all around. Like, oh yeah, like it'd be a great time to sell my house. It'd be worth way more, but then I'd have nothing to buy.
Yeah, and that's the conundrum that a lot of people are in. Like right now, everybody's like, it's a seller's market, so everybody's cashing out and then renting temporarily, and then everybody's waiting for like the housing market to burst at this point. And I couldn't wait on that. I've been renting for the past 6 months as it is. So
dude,
I'm fortunate to get my own place. I get the keys in a couple of weeks.
Is this your first house you've ever bought?
This is my second house that I've ever owned. The first one on my own.
Okay, nice. Nice. It's you were talking about renting apartment, like you were saying something about balcony. The one thing I do miss about renting is the when something breaks, I can just call someone, be like, "Yo, take care of it." But dude, I will say, being a homeowner, thank God for YouTube, because holy shit, there's been so many times like something happens and I'm like, fuck, if I call someone, this is gonna cost like so much money.
Right. I replaced 3 of the toilets in my house thanks to YouTube. Every time I've got to touch something like plumbing, I'm straight to YouTube and I'm like, how do I stop this drip? How do I stop this hissing noise? But when it comes to something like electrical, I'm like, all right, let me dial up a professional on this one. I can't wait to get into my house, because I'm going to be doing a lot of renos on this place. It's a little bit of a fixer-upper. It's a little bit of an older place. But I'm looking forward to making it mine. It is a condo as well, so I don't have to worry about anything outside either.
Oh, you don't have a lawn? Oh, lucky you.
Yeah, lawn maintenance is all taken care of. All of the exterior maintenance, the roof, all taken care of.
Oh, damn.
That's always been a big relief to me. So.
Damn, because, I mean, I've got a decent-sized yard, but I've gotten to a point where I have to pay someone to mow it now, because it's just too much. Like, it's gotten way too hot. And it's just gotten too much for me to handle, because if it was just mowing itself, I'd be fine. But there's the trimming, there's the all the bushes got to trim, because if you don't, goes crazy. They start turning into trees, and I'm all like, I can't do it anymore. Like, and I'm not like some old man, but it's just Florida's just way too hot.
Right. I mean, Florida, and I mean, I sympathize with the Pacific Northwest this year as well.
Oh my gosh,
they've been going through. I couldn't imagine having to do something like lawn maintenance in the middle of a heat wave.
Oh man. Yeah, like it really took me by surprise that, and this is just my ignorance here, where a lot of people in the Pacific Northwest, they don't have AC a lot of times.
Right.
And that's crazy to me.
I learned from some of our friends across the pond. that they don't have AC over there
That's
either.
insane to me.
Right, exactly. And I mean, I am sure like you from the south,
Yeah.
and even me, like I'm in Toronto. We would never be able to get away with not having air
Oh
conditioning.
yeah, like you would die.
Right, right. Like the Northeast here, we get as high temperatures as we get low, so we need to be prepared for each of it.
Yeah.
You don't need to worry about snow removal down there, but that's a
Not
big
yet.
concern up here in Canada too.
Hey, it snowed here like maybe 10 years ago
Yeah,
for like a minute before
yeah.
it turned to rain. But then with all
Uh,
this climate change, I mean, who the fuck knows?
right. I mean, Texas got hit by a huge snowstorm earlier this year, right?
Oh.
Who knows when it's Florida's turn?
I know, right? Oh man, Efren of Cardsphere,
Mm,
he got hit hard because he lives in Texas, and
mm,
he was saying like they didn't have power for over a week because
yeah,
of that thing. And you think like, oh, it's cold, it's not too bad. I'm like, oh no, like you're without any kind of heat. You just have to
yeah,
bundle up. And he was saying it was like absolute misery because you can't cook anything.
yeah.
You're just stuck. You can't have any hot food. And
Exactly, exactly.
God,
Just like the Pacific Northeast doesn't or Northwest doesn't have air conditioners, the
yeah,
South doesn't have furnaces,
I
right?
know.
So
It's
the
freaking.
stuff that people are going through is just ridiculous, and you gotta sympathize with the people that
Oh
have to
yeah.
go through these kind of things for
I
sure.
can't imagine. It's friggin' because that brings up another thing. Like my wife and I have been talking about, where we, after the whole house flood, we were talking about, you know, obviously not wanting to stay in this house forever, but actually moving. And if we moved, we just have no idea where we want to go.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
as much as I can't stand Florida a lot of time, it's cheap as hell to live here. There's no state taxes. The it property tax is low, and
Yeah.
but I mean, shit, we got to deal with hurricanes. We just had a hurricane last week, and which you get used to them though. Um, and but
Yeah.
it's like, and I know everywhere you go, it's going to have its own issues, right? I just also don't
Mhm.
want to deal with snow. I don't like snow. I like visiting snow. I don't
Yeah.
like being like, I wouldn't want to live in it though.
Absolutely. Well, while I was doing house hunting, I had a few friends from the U.S. Uh, Midwest
Hmm.
saying, "Hey, your housing prices they're pretty ridiculous. Why don't you check out what you can get here for that same price?" And I'm like, "Wow! If I lived in the U.S., I would happily move to the middle of nowhere in
Right?
order to get a fantastic place out there. Sure, you might need to worry about like the occasional tornado or something, but still, you can't beat the housing prices when you live in the middle of nowhere."
Oh my gosh, like I bought my house for like 150,000, and and I don't live in a mansion or anything like that. It's a normal 3 bedroom, 2 bath, and all that. And it's it's funny because if you look at the prices over by Tampa, which is just south of me, 150,000, like buy this like little crack shack, right?
Yeah,
And then you
right.
try to buy the same thing over in California. Like my house would probably go for like over $1 million over in California. Like this is
Yeah.
not worth $1 million, trust me.
Right, and that's what we're looking at inflation-wise up here in Ontario as well. Ontario has very quickly become one of the most expensive
That's
places to own
crazy.
property. It used to be
Like,
isolated to just like the city center and the core around Toronto,
what the
but
hell?
over the past 2 or 3 years, those housing prices have just crept all along the Great Lakes, and it's nigh impossible to get anything anywhere at a reasonable price. I was lucky that I snuck in on a
Yeah.
place and got it at a decent price, but still, to see how much farther my money could have gone if I packed up and moved a province or two over is pretty ridiculous.
See, and that's crazy to me. It's like, we're millennials, right? And, we just need to
A
stop.
geriatric millennial.
I'm a geriatric millennial too. So, um, it's, we just need to work harder to get a house, and stop buying the avocado toast. You know,
Exactly.
go pull up our bootstraps. And I think about I promise we'll get to magic, folks. All right. I just think about because my oldest daughter is going to be turning 18 next month, and at that age, I was already thinking about moving out and all that stuff, like getting away. And it's like, I talked to her, like, what do you want to do and all that stuff, and we've already told her, like, you're never going to be, we're never going to charge you rent or anything like that, and you can stay here as long as you want, as long as you're working towards something and not just doing nothing. But she's been looking at apartments with her friends because, at that age, they all want to move in together and all that. And like some of these apartments are like almost $2,000 a month. Like, my mortgage is nowhere near that. How the fuck do you can't afford that shit?
Exactly. It is mind-boggling. I think the first place that I rented when I was 18, 19, like I was paying sub $500 for
right.
rent.
Yeah.
And now to rent a 1-bedroom apartment, it's easily close to $2,000 around a city center. Like
yeah, that's
like how do you expect a student straight out of high school to be able to do that? It is insane. Like
not unless you have like 10 people in there,
Right. Or you have mom and dad helping you out.
Yeah,
right?
that too.
You see all of these articles from like The Onion where it's like millennial is able to afford a house thanks to down payment from mom and dad, right? Like, those kind of things, or the completely serious ones that are like, hey, I was able to afford this house just by saving up, and also I got a loan from my parents, right? Or like they co-signed the mortgage with me. That's the only way people are getting a house these days. And if you're in our very generous age group here, the only way that you're going to own property is if it's inherited at this point. Like that's
I feel lucky that we bought our house back in 2014, 2015, something like that. And the only way we were able to afford it was due to our county as a first home buyers program. First time home buyers program. They'll essentially pay the down payment for you. You have to take like some class to like know what it is to be a homeowner or whatever. It's like a 2-hour class, and you only have to pay it back if you sell the house before the mortgage is up, before the 30-year mortgage, or if you pass. So it means just like your next of kin has to pay it, which is kind of fucked up.
Exactly. I mean, we talked about inheriting property. That's inheriting property the wrong way. That's inheriting debt, right? The last thing that you need is like, my parents passed away, and instead of like an inheritance, I inherited what's left on their mortgage, right? Like,
oh God, yeah,
it's ridiculous.
But I mean, that was the only way we were able to even buy this house, and it's like we had money saved down, but shit, it was, and like I don't even know if a lot of counties have those programs or like other countries have those programs. It's I have no idea.
What we have up here in Canada is a tax credit.
Okay.
So for a first-time home owner, it goes towards your taxes at the end of the year.
Okay.
Towards it. So you don't have to pay as much at the end of the year at tax season. You might get a little bit back in your pocket, but nothing as generous as assuming your mortgage for you.
Yeah, well, not the mortgage, just the down payment.
The down payments. Yeah,
but still, down payments are pretty up there. It was like $8,000 to $10,000, something like that, which we didn't have to pay. So, I mean,
that's not bad. I wish the down payment on my new place was $8,000 to $10,000 because it's definitely not. I'm lucky that I sold another piece of property in order to be able to afford this one. That's
that's right. Because with prices going up, it must be insane.
Yeah.
I don't even want to imagine.
It is ridiculous. When cameras aren't rolling, I'll tell you how much that was.
God. All right, so let's get into some magic here. All right, Hull Breacher, who did break stuff.
Yes.
So as of this recording, this is coming out. I mean, normally I release every Friday, but we're recording on July 15th, which is a Thursday, so it's not coming out on the 16th. It'll come out on the 23rd. So by then it'll be over a week since Hull Breacher has been banned.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that was a good move for them to ban it?
So I think that that's an interesting question because just 2 weeks ago I released a video about cards and user intent and how cards can be either tools or weapons. And
Oh, I think I remember
like,
watching that. Yeah.
yeah, if you want to see it, it's also on my YouTube channel or linked on the official rules committee site as well. They added to their cultivated content section.
Oh, cool.
But I talked about how a card like Hull Breacher, in particular using the example of Hull Breacher, can be used as a stacks tool almost to dissuade opponents from drawing an additional card. And in those cases, it's relatively harmless. But when you combine it with a wheel and end up locking your opponents out of the game, that's not the card's fault. That's the user's fault. That's the intention to turn a game into a non-game.
Yeah.
And if that's understood as what you want out of a game, 100% fine. But if you sit down at a table with randoms and you turn 3 Hull Breacher wheel them, nobody's having a good time except you, and that turns into a shitty situation. And I think that the rules committee saw that Hull Breacher is being used as a weapon more often than it's being used as a tool. And I definitely get that impression because after I released that video, I had so many comments on it saying, Magic is a game where you are supposed to win. Why wouldn't you use Hull Breacher in combination with a wheel?
Yeah.
Why not? Everybody was saying that is the way that Hull Breacher is supposed to be used. And seeing that much information, which information is a rarity about the format of Commander and the way that people use it and interact with it, but seeing that much information, just a small sample size of people saying, I don't understand, it's a fine card, I completely understand why the Rules Committee is justified in saying this is a toxic card because it encourages toxic behavior. And
yeah.
the Rules Committee is about adding cards to the banned list that create bad experiences. And while Hull Breacher doesn't always create bad experiences, if it is being used more often than not to create a poor play experience and a poor impression on somebody who may be new to the format, then I understand why they would say, we don't want to open up the opportunity for this card to be used as a weapon, as opposed to a tool.
No, totally get that. And that was part of one of the tweets I had when the ban announcement was announced, because just on the surface, and I mentioned this in my tweet, that I have never played with the card. I've never really been played against it, except maybe once, but it wasn't used. I think it was used more as a tool than an actual weapon. It was just made to stop everybody from drawing 5 million cards. And to me, it's a very annoying card, yes. But to me, just at that time, it didn't seem that bad until when everybody started telling me, well, it can be used for this XYZ, wheels and all this other stuff. And I totally got it. And that's why I also mentioned you still got Notion Thief and Narset Parter Veils, which...
Yeah, you still have options to be able to do that. And you've got things like Alms Collector and White as well.
Yep.
That gives you a pseudo ability in that too. And I think that you and I are in a rare situation as content creators where we can sit down with people and have that conversation of what are we hoping for out of this game? What are we looking to do? What kind of environment do we want to foster? And I have Hull Breacher in exactly one deck with specifically no wheels in it. And I have to sit down before every game and say, just a word of caution, I have Hull Breacher in this deck and no wheels. And when you have to sit down and have that disclaimer every time you play a deck with one card in it, you know that that card is a problem card. You know that that's an issue. And I've played Hull Breacher in CEDH before, but the assumption in CEDH is that if you're going to get Breacher wheeled, that's fine. That's an assumed game state. That's an acceptable use of the card. If you sit down with a casual deck in a casual pod for entertainment and somebody Hull Breacher wheels you, suddenly it's not entertaining anymore. And
Yep.
like I said, with the comments and the feedback, I had people saying, well, if I hull breach or wheel someone and they keep playing, that's their fault, not mine. And I'm like, all right, I
That's the
understand
worst kind of
entirely.
attitude. It's
I understand entirely why the RC would step in here and say, no, this is fostering that kind of behavior. We don't want it.
Yeah, and you made a good point. There's competitive EDH, and that's something that I heard someone. I was talking to them. They stopped playing EDH because, and they brought up a good point as to why they stopped playing. And I don't necessarily agree with it, but I can see where they're coming from. They stopped playing it because they got tired of wanting to build all these competitive decks in EDH, but
Mm-hmm.
so many people hated it, and they were tired of trying to make everyone else feel better because to him, Magic is the one-on-one. I'm gonna
Yeah.
I'm gonna beat you by any means necessary, and so they went back to just playing strictly Modern and Legacy, and I totally get that because
Mm-hmm.
that's what they enjoy. They want to win. And I feel like those formats are perfect for those kind of people. Even CEDH, where they build decks specifically to win. And I'm at a point in my Magic career where I don't give a shit about winning anymore. I just want to have fun doing stupid shit.
I want to do something cool. That is
Yeah.
100% my MO right now. Is like, let me show off this weird, obscure interaction where I'm able to make 100,000 copies of something. Like
Yeah.
that's all I want to do.
Yeah, like I've got a few higher powered decks, obviously. But pretty much almost every deck I build nowadays is gonna be something dumb that if it wins, how the fuck did I win type
Yeah,
thing.
right. Yeah,
Got
I
super lucky.
assembled the 7 card Rube Goldberg machine, and I managed to come out on top. Right, like that.
Yeah.
That's completely what scratches my itch there. But I understand the catalyst for some where sitting down and understanding that winning is not necessarily the end goal for everybody is something that a lot of players that come from other formats need to wrap their head around. For
Oh yeah.
people that come from kitchen table or people whose only format is commander, they know and they'll sit down and they'll have a rule zero conversation with you because they'll tell you, hey, this is my pony deck, or like this is my all bears deck. That's fantastic. You know that you aren't going to get like breacher locked out of
Yeah.
that. You know that somebody's not dropping a humility in a game like that. But it's the people that come from other formats, and I'm not trying to vilify them at all, but they're
Oh
the
no.
people that are used to sitting down across from somebody and just knowing what the goal is, and it is to win. And there's a format if you want to do that, and it's the higher power spectrum of Commander, where you can sit down with somebody and you don't have to have the rule zero talk with them because everybody is on the same page about it. And that's one of the things that I love about high power Commander, about CEDH, is that everybody is on the same page. When you sit down, you're like, hey, are we going for a high power game? Yes. Okay, great. And that's all you have to do, right? So for the people that are hesitant or afraid to have a rule zero conversation and talk about what game expectations are, that end of the power spectrum may be their bag. That's what works for them because again, those assumptions are there. You're sitting down, you're just going to try and win.
Everyone's playing Thassa's Oracle. That's all they play.
Right,
No,
right.
I'm
You know,
joking.
you're playing Consultation Oracle in every deck,
Yeah.
or you're playing Breacher Wheels or whatever it might be. You're playing the fast mana. You're playing to have a game that ends on turn 3 or 4,
Yeah.
not one that goes for 3.5 hours, which is entirely natural in the format as well, right? But that's what these pregame conversations are about.
Oh yeah.
Sitting down and saying, are we having a game for fun? Are we making entertainment right now? Is everybody here to shoot the shit and have a good time? Or are we here to like jam 10 games in a night?
Yeah.
Like, is the expectation we're doing 2 or is the expectation we're doing 10? I've got a personal play group where we do high powered games. And we sit down and the expectation is, yeah, we're probably going to play like 6 or 7 games in the span of 3 to 4 hours, where I'll sit down with content creators and it's assumed that in 3 hours we're going to play maybe 2 games. And both of those are fine, but you need to know what you're up against and
Oh,
you
yeah.
need to gauge accordingly. So many people say, I don't care what other people want. I want to do X, Y, Z. And they sit down at the table, and that's where you get pub stomps, right? That's where you get somebody who sits down and they're like, hey, I'm going to go with like my full tier 0 Nagila high power EDH deck.
Gross.
And I'm going to win on turn 3 because I've got 10 1.5 card combos in this deck. And that's fine as long as everybody else is on the same page. But when you sit down and you show Nagila as your commander and everybody groans and you say, hey, it isn't that kind of Nagila deck, and then you go like Nagila Sword of Feast and Famine and you win, everybody's like, all right, whatever, enjoy your stomp. We're going to sub in somebody else for game 2. Right?
Yeah.
And at that point, nobody's having fun. 3 people just sat through a shitty game, and 1 person has now been ostracized because they decided to stomp rather than have a conversation.
Yeah, that's I've got a commander like that every time I play her, she gets groans, and it's Narset. And I've seen some degenerate shit with Narset. But I built
Narset was my first CEDH deck, so I entirely
know
the feeling.
So and it's. But I'm just like you, where I have to explain, like, no, it's not that kind of Narset deck. It's literally Monk Tribal. It's garbage. it's like, I've won with it. I've had a lot of fun with it and all that, but it's like, it's so slow. But I built it to be a Narset Tribal / Monk Tribal. I tried to get every single card that has Narset art on it, because she's one of my favorites.
Right, but it's funny that you sit down across from people and they have these predisposition to certain commanders, right?
Oh yeah, I think everybody does. Like, I see Atraxa and I'm like, oh god.
Right. I'm like, oh, how long till I get 10 poison counters?
Right. Or is this going to be Planeswalker Tribal?
Exactly. A Super Friends deck.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had games where I sat down across from players playing Tymna Thrasios, like a classic high power combo. But then they're playing like an arcane spell tribal deck. And
that's cool.
You know, they sit down and they say, hey, this isn't the kind of Nagila Tymna Thrasios deck that you're expecting here. Okay, well, show it to me. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt once. And they're like, trust me. Okay, I'll trust you once, but if you break that trust, I'm not going to play with you again. I'm not going to give you another mile to take here.
Yeah, that's like my Grand Arbiter deck, where I purposely it is a monster. I purposely built that deck out of spite. When I first built it, it was like back in the pre-pandemic days, when I used to actually go to LGSs and play with random people. Like the LGS I went to just had so many high-powered decks and so many infinite combo bullshit and all that stuff. I'm like, you know what? Just out of spite, I'm going to build Grand Arbiter Control, and Approach of the Second Sun is the only win con. I'm not going to allow anyone to play Magic, because fuck you. You all want to like try to win by turn 2, turn 3. So I have a thing on my Twitch page. You can spend 10,000 channel points to have me play Grand Arbiter, and I'm just like, you want to fucking you want to torture me, you make me play this deck, and it's god awful torture. So when I did my 14-hour stream a couple weeks ago to celebrate my 5 years of the podcast, someone redeemed the Grand Arbiter, and I'm just like, fuck no, please no, dear God. I won the game, but it was so fucking miserable. Like, and I had to tell the pod, like, are you all okay with me playing Grand Arbiter? Because it's gonna be god awful.
Nobody is going to enjoy this. I promise you.
Most of all, me. I'm not going to enjoy this, because I literally just stopped everyone from doing everything. I'm like, nope, can't do it. And I didn't put in it like a knowledge pool lock or anything like that. I was just like, counter, get all my counters back. All right, counter.
Yeah. You know, you rule a law, or your arcane laboratory where people are only casting one spell a turn, and you got it full of counter spells, and it's just like, well, you know, there's my attempt at one a turn, and then they just ship it to the next person. You do that for 2 hours.
Oh god, it was so painful. And then but yeah, that's like probably my one deck I have that is, I still keep it around because I do love blue-white control. Like when I played Modern, that was one of my favorite decks. But I mainly I don't know. I just keep it around just to taunt people. Like, don't make me fucking bring out Grand Arbiter and all that shit. And then they realize, like, oh god, this has been a mistake for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a huge fan of Death and Taxes in Modern.
Yeah.
But like, it'll be a cold day when you catch me playing like a Taxes deck in Commander, because the last thing that I want to do is to have other people not have a good time in Commander. And that's actually a lesson that I didn't learn right away. It wasn't until I got into content creation and started playing with a wider audience that I realized that things like monopolizing people's time, taking really long turns,
Oh yeah.
or
Oh yeah.
or doing things like preventing other people from playing, or singling one player out, or eliminating one player before the other players, create bad experiences for people. And after you do it once or twice, you realize like that empathy kicks in, or is supposed to kick in for people, where it's like, I might have knocked this person out on turn 3 or 4, and then we played for another hour, and that person sat there and twiddled their thumbs. Early on, I played a game with Chase, Mana Curves, and Jason Alt, and I knocked Jason out on like turn 3, and then the game went on for another close to 90 minutes.
I've been in those, yeah.
And I felt so bad. I swore to myself, like, as cool as it is to make a combo where you can like 0 or like 40 to 0 somebody in one shot, if it's one player at a time, I'm going to leave that at home. I'm going to leave that for like an off-camera game, or, in an instance where the other players are going to be like, okay, well, let's scoop, let's move on to the next one, because the last thing that you want is somebody sitting there doing nothing for the entire game. And I still feel super bad about it. I've apologized to Jason over and over about it. But you get into those situations, and you realize that some people have that reaction to it, where it's like, this is something that I clearly should not have done. I should not have made other people's game, which they're doing for fun, I should not have made their experience worse. I should be seeking to better their experience. But some people say, if I'm making somebody else's experience worse, I'm making mine better, and that's all that matters. And I think that that's against the spirit of the format. And I think that with the Hull Breacher ban, the RC clearly agrees with that.
No, totally agree. The other thing that I learned, especially last year, like you said, playing with a wide array of people, pandemic comes around, we don't have anything to do, started playing on Discord video with people before Spell Table, and the one thing that really like opened up my eyes, right, because what I considered low power, was some people's like up here like super high power, right? Because at the time I only had like maybe 5 to 10 decks when we all started playing on my Discord, and I would tell them like, oh yeah, this is my lowest power deck, and then just stomp everybody like, oh shit. Like, and then I would try to build another deck that I thought was low powered and still beat everybody. And that's when you have to sort of take a step back and realize, okay, what am I doing here? I'm trying to deconstruct or devolve my power, or depower my power or my decks or whatever. And it was a big eye opener, and it was good, because now it's, I have all these decks now that are, from low power to high power and in between. And it does open up your eyes to what people consider high power, low power, and all that stuff too, because everybody has a different definition of it.
Absolutely. And everybody has a different definition of what that power spectrum is, which is why I've stopped asking people, what's the power level of your deck?
Yeah.
And I started asking people, what does your deck do? What is it trying to do? How does it win? And when you get an understanding of that, and somebody says, well, my deck wins through combat damage. Okay, is there another way that it wins? No. Okay, I know at what power spectrum I need to play at, because this is going to be like a turn things sideways kind of game. If somebody says, well, I've got a couple of 2-card combos in here, I'm running Thassa's Oracle, but it's not with something like Demonic Consultation, it's like a draw my library win con. Okay, I understand where we're sitting at on that spectrum. And then when somebody says, like, yeah, I'm running like Godot Helm, all right, I understand what we're going for power-wise. And I don't know whether that's just because I have such encyclopedic knowledge of the format and of what cards are and what cards do. But I find that when you sit down with somebody and you say, what is your deck trying to do and how does it win? That is so much more healthy than asking, what's your power level? Because power level is subjective, but what your deck's trying to do and how it wins is objective. And I am all about adding objectivity to a format like Commander. That's in my entire deck building philosophy. So let's look at things objectively.
So how long have you been playing Commander now?
I've been playing Commander since just after the first precons, so about 10 years now.
So that was what, the 2011 precons?
Yes.
The Mimeoplasm and Kali and all that?
Yeah, exactly. And Animar.
Yeah.
Those.
Yeah.
Yeah, the three color ones. Yeah.
Yeah. So my question to you is then, for someone who's new, who maybe's only been playing a year or two, and still has no idea of like every Magic card that's out there and all that stuff, how would you even have people understand that level, right? Because you and I, we've been playing Magic for a long time. You tell me, turn things sideways, you're going to combo off and all that stuff. I've got ways to, okay, this deck will be able to fare well against that deck, type thing.
Yeah.
But then how do you tell new people to understand that as well? Because that's the thing with power levels, was at least on the surface it seems easy, like, okay, this precon is a power level 4, right?
But who put that power level 4 on it? Did the rules committee stamp it and say this is a 4? Did Wizards come and say this is a power level 4? No, that's assumed as well. You sit down and you say, well, based on my play experience and how many games that I've won, and suddenly you're introducing the subjective to it, because it's how many I've won. It's what's my experience with it. And that doesn't translate, because somebody else might be sitting down against that same precon with something else and have had their asses kicked by it. And when you say, well, this is a power level 4 precon, and they have like an 0-10 track record against that precon, do they view it as a power level 4? No, they're probably viewing it as a power level 8, because, again, subjectivity. But when you get into it and you say, well, my deck attacks with creatures, it's going to win by turns like 7 or 8 if I'm lucky, then you think to yourself, well, in my experience with my decks, do I have anything that wins via combat damage and around that same time frame, turn 7 or 8? Yeah, I probably have a deck that can fit into that. Sure. So suddenly you're taking like the subjectivity away from it, as in like you're judging somebody else's deck and you start judging your own decks by that. And you're not assigning an arbitrary number to it, like a power level. You're saying, what does my deck do and how does it win? I'm staring at my my Academy Manufactor deck. My Academy Manufactor deck looks to make as many Academy Manufactors as possible, make as many treasures, clues, and food as possible. It's super consistent because I have a bunch of tutors in it, because it's essentially a hidden commander deck. So I say, like, this is a turn 5 or 6 deck that it can win by. It's going to kill the entire table at once, and it's going to do it by making 1 million tokens, like literally 1 million tokens. So somebody says, okay, well, I know that it's a combo deck. I know that it'll win by turn 4 or 5. I probably have something that falls in that spectrum. It might win by like turn 6 or 7. It's a bit of a combo deck as well. It wins by making an infinitely large creature or several infinitely large creatures and attacking with them. I can swing in that club.
Okay.
And again, you're taking out the subjectivity and introducing the objectivity.
Makes sense.
And so some people might lack that self-awareness. I want to put that in there as well. Some people might lack that familiarity with their own decks. And every once in a while, it's okay to have a mismatch like that and say, wow, my deck went off a lot faster than I thought it was going to. I've
done that before. I think we've all done that.
Absolutely. Where we sat down and we said, like, hey, I'm really sorry that I'm winning right now. You have that experience, but then you're able to gauge better for the next games. Maybe this deck isn't appropriate to play with these same decks again, right? And as long as you have that kind of empathy and you've got that kind of self-awareness, fantastic. It's the people that willfully don't that create poor players.
Oh yeah. That always pisses me off. It's good story that a lot of my listeners know and even viewers on my stream. The first time I used to have a Boros Allies deck that had Munda as the commander. So when Winota came out in Ikoria, I'm like, okay, let me try Winota, because I love allies as a tribe because they're so synergistic and all that stuff. And Munda, the deck never really won or anything. Like, I would only win if someone just ignored me or whatever. Yeah. So like, I remember the first time I took out Winota on stream, and I'm like I've never played it with Winota. I don't know how well it's gonna do. Holy fuck! It was way too good. Like, right? Holy shit! It was yeah. That's all I can say is just like, yeah, and that's like a good example of it. Like, I personally thought like it's gonna be good, it's gonna be decent, but holy shit, it kind of went on a whole nother level of being good. Like, it just won super fast, and I'm like, I felt bad for the table. Like, by turn 6 or 7, I'm like, I have 150 life right now, and I've killed 2 of you, and even if you board wipe me, I'm gonna be able to build up my
right. Oh, yeah. And sometimes a deck just goes off like that, and often it's the ones that you're playing for like the first time, or the ones you haven't played in a while, and you realize like, in this circumstance, it's a perfect storm for this deck for it to go off. And sometimes you're just gonna go off a lot sooner and a lot faster and a lot better because you hit the nuts in your opener, right? And maybe you got that Soul Ring in your opener, and you went land Soul Ring Talisman, and suddenly you're 4 turns ahead of the rest of the table.
Right.
It's gonna happen. I mean, one of my favorite examples of this is I built an Emoti Celebrant of Bounty deck right after Commander Legends came out because I loved it. I love Cascade. I wanted to do cool stuff with it, and building like a Cascade centric deck where your average converted mana cost is 6+. I was like, fantastic. Like, you look at the curve on this, and it's going to be like, you're basically not doing anything until Emoti comes down, and then you're like cascading over and over and over again. And I went like turn 3 Emoti, turn 4 Apex Devastator.
Oh, damn!
5 times.
Oh, that's gross.
Right, and I ended up like cascading into extra turn spells, which cascaded themselves.
Oh,
and
damn!
Suddenly, I was apologizing to the table, and I was like, "Look, this deck has gone off. It wasn't intended to do this. I know that you've been sitting around and watching me take 4 turns in a row. I feel bad about this." And I immediately turned around and I took the deck apart. Like, it did what it did. It did it a lot better than I wanted, but it created such a poor play experience for the other 3 people sitting around the table. Yeah. And I was just like, nope, never again.
I've done that before, yeah. I've got an Averna Cascade deck that I built purposely with like no kind of tutors, none. Like, I think the only counter spell I even have is the Cascade one. Just because I want Cascade. But I did no extra turn stuff. It's literally like draw go type thing. I've got a few draw spells, but it's more just whatever I Cascade into, that's what's going to happen. I don't know. And to me, I kind of like that because it's random. It's
right.
Different experience.
It's still stories like that make me think twice before I build like a Simic Good Stuff commander again, because there are just some deck archetypes or color combinations where no matter what you do, it's going to be a lot better than you expect or that's out there. And that's because the value floor on a lot of the cards that you're playing is so much higher than anything else.
I know, right? Green is terrible. It needs all the help it gets, and especially blue.
Exactly.
They're garbage.
When you combine land ramp with card draw, who knew things would be good, right?
Let's talk about that real quick. Like, do you remember when Green's always been good at ramp, but back in Ravnica Allegiance, or before Ravnica Allegiance came out, Simic was always just, like, in the past 2 Ravnica sets, Simic was always kind of like trash, right? Like Graft was good, but it wasn't completely broken. I mean, yeah, you could have Experiment Kraj and do infinite combo shit with Horseshoe Crab and all that. But what was the Simic thing in Return to Ravnica? Evolve?
Yes, Evolve. And that's when the archetype kind of got +1/+1 counters worked into it. And I think that's when things really started to evolve for the color combination.
But it still didn't feel that strong. You know, like it was still good, but I feel like Ravnica Allegiance, they just took Simic and like, we're gonna break it now. We're just gonna make it complete good stuff. Growth Spiral, Hydroid Crisis, Wilderness Reclamation,
Yeah,
what the fuck else? You know, just
yeah,
Uro, when with Theros Beyond Death came out, it's like Oko,
yeah.
you know.
Exactly,
Fuck.
exactly. And it's funny because I've sat down and I've talked with Gavin from Wizards, and
Hmm.
he's talked about what development cycles look like and how they develop so far in advance that they
Oh
don't
yeah.
know what the ramifications of these cards are going to be. They can guess, and they have the future league in house
Yeah.
where they play these cards against each other. But it's only when you introduce it to such a wide audience
Oh,
that
I
you
know.
understand what the capabilities of some of these cards are. So like I've been playing Magic since Ice Age, and I
Hmm.
remember when the closest thing to green card draw uh, we had was like Compost in like Masks, when it's like whenever a player plays a
Yeah.
blue spell, draw a card, or whenever a black permanent goes or black card goes to a
Yeah.
graveyard, draw a card. And then like there was nothing through until Onslaught, where you got an on combat damage draw trigger in green in the first time, and you can see that evolution of the color where it goes from, you know, it's got one thing in its ramp to now it does everything. And when you combine a
Yeah.
color that now does everything with another color that does everything, you get broken degenerate bullshit. And one of my favorite latest examples of this is look at all of the sweet stuff that Red has gotten lately. Over the past several years, Red has gone from a joke of a color to a real contender because Red now has great card draw outlets. Red
Oh
has
yeah.
ramp and rituals with token generators. And that has been a very clear sign of Wizards' development process, understanding that a color needs help and
Hmm.
ramping up with it. So when everybody sits around and shits on white right now, give it like a couple of years, like give it 2 or 3 years, and suddenly you're going to start seeing white get a lot of new tricks and a lot of new tools,
Yeah, we
and
saw
you're
some of
going to
that in the
say,
Strixhaven, um, the pre-con, the Oscar one.
yeah, exactly, the lore hold kind of
Yeah,
flavor
Lorehold.
spin on
Yeah.
Boros, right? Boros has been a joke for
Oh
years
yeah.
because all it does is turn dudes sideways. But now with Lorehold, we've gotten so many more tricks for
Hmm.
that color combination. Look at that as the evolution of what Wizards wants to do with some of these colors and some of the mechanics that they're getting, some of the interactions that they're getting. And I am so hopeful that one day we're going to get all of the colors on an even playing field again. And I've got the confidence that design is going to get there eventually, but you have to have the patience. White is clearly lacking right now. White clearly has a
Oh yeah.
deficit right now. Give it a couple of years. We're seeing powerful stuff come out for it, card by card by card.
Oh yeah, for sure. One thing I did want to bring up that is something that I started to notice this trend, and I don't know if it's just me. Um, but one thing I've noticed with a lot more new people coming into EDH, Magic, and then EDH, one thing I noticed that I see very common is someone will get their first deck, right? Whether it be a precon or they build it themselves, and they want to make it as powerful as possible, right? Because I mean, and I feel like that's common, you know, because I was the same way. Like my first EDH deck was Crewfix that I built by myself, and it used to be Hydra Tribal, and
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to get all the best Hydras, and then I discovered Eldrazi because I didn't play during the original Zendikar because I took a break during that. And when I discovered Eldrazi, I'm like, okay, it's going to be Eldrazi Tribal and all that, and it still is.
Mm-hmm.
And and so what I noticed is they build their this deck, make it super strong, super powerful, and then it just gets to a point where maybe we're that arms race with their friends. They're at the top now, and then they build another deck and they make it really strong and optimized and powerful. And then I feel like at some point along the way, they're just like, all right, I'm bored of this. Let's make fun, meme decks or whatever.
Yep.
And then I notice that then that's all they start doing, and then maybe they go back to making powerful decks, but it's more of they want to make fun decks. And
And you have described the exact arc that my friend group and I were on when we started out in Commander. we started out in Commander and we made some decks, and then like they weren't really balanced against each other. Like one player's deck really trumped another player's deck, so they built another deck to play against that. And the meta arms race of playing in such an insular play group really does result in an escalation to the point where you reach like, hey, everybody's playing competitive. All of a sudden, everybody's playing really high power. Everybody's found the CEDH deck database, and now they're building stuff out of that as well. And then you loop back around and you say, hey, let's just play for shits and giggles. I've got this like fun 10-card combo that I want to do. I don't want to play 10 games tonight. I want to play 2. And you get into it where it's really super chill. But you have that understanding when you're really familiar with a player. And you mentioned like a lot of players saying, like, I want to make this deck as powerful as possible. On my series where I do tune-ups on my channel, I have players reach out to me with deck lists, and the first line in it is always, I have this deck and I want to make it as powerful as possible. Every time. And I've received hundreds of submissions at this point.
Yeah.
And everybody is like, hey, I really like this commander. I really like what it does, but I want to make it as powerful as possible. Everybody says that. And I always message that person back, and I'm like, do you want to make it as powerful as possible, or do you want to make it fun? Do you want to have a good time, or do you want to beat someone? Because not necessarily are those the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
And they might say, like, hey, I'm getting my ass kicked by somebody else in my group, so I want to build a deck that's more powerful than theirs. No, you want to play a deck that plays around that play style is what you want to do. And some people can't express it, and some people don't know that there are things other than I just want to beat my friends. Because Commander is the evolution of kitchen table magic.
Yep.
And kitchen table magic is where you sit around with the same like 4 to 8 people all the time, and you play the same decks, and you sit down
playing
and say,
free-for-all Magic with 60-card decks and
exactly,
with whatever you had in your collection.
Yeah, that is exactly it. And now
that's what I remember as a kid,
taking over the casual format, and you're sitting down and it's like, oh, you know, such and such got their Goblin deck, and now it's like, now they've got their Krenko deck. We're gonna get mobbed by 1,000,000 goblins now. What do we do to do that? Well, maybe include 1 or 2 cards that prevents them from doing that.
Yeah.
Right. But you don't have to build the most powerful deck because you don't want to escalate that arms race.
Yeah.
Right.
No, for sure. No,
yeah.
No, go on.
It's just about that expectation within a play group as well.
Yeah, and I feel like that's super important. Where setting the expectation, and really, this is the thing that I love with Magic is there's just so many possibilities of what you can and can't build, and it's basically endless. And it kind of makes me yearn for the day of kitchen table play. More so, like is the more so my journey into Magic. I started back in Urza Saga, played until Nemesis, I think, then stopped, didn't pick it up again until Kamigawa Ravnica, and then stopped again and didn't pick it up for good until M13, and I haven't stopped since. I kind of miss the days of just when I was ignorant of everything, like didn't know. And not that I still know every single card, right? But it's like my knowledge of cards is a lot greater than when I came back to it and all that stuff. And I kind of miss those days of just kind of building with whatever cards I had on hand and making these fun decks. And it's just, you can't go back to those days, man. I miss it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the wonder of discovering something that you've never seen before.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I love looking at viewer-submitted deck lists, because I'll look at this and they're building around a concept that I would have never thought of or have never seen in the wild before.
Yeah.
They're including a card in there that's such a deep cut that I'm like, I have never seen this card played before, but it is such a perfect fit for this deck. And those are the kind of like gold nuggets that I love to see. And one of the reasons why I will sit down across from people and if I have a game with somebody, I'm like, send me your deck list afterwards, because I want to see all of the cool shit that you put in there.
Yeah,
because
right?
to me, that is my wonder. Like that is what I love to do. I love to sit down across from somebody. I love to see the glow on their face when they tell me about their deck, and then I love seeing all of the spice that they put in that deck list.
Yeah, I do like that. Yeah.
It's fantastic. That is like Christmas to me when I look at somebody's list and I'm like, whoa, where did this card come from? Like,
Right.
I've got a friend right now who's playing with Ice Cauldron as a card for a cornerstone for her deck. And I am like, oh, wow, I have not seen Ice Cauldron since I started playing, and I have never seen it in Commander at this point. If
Yeah, I
you're
don't
able
think
to
I've
do something
ever
like this,
seen it in Commander.
I want to see it go off. I want
Right?
to see the spice. And that kind of thing, that fills me with joy. That makes me giddy like a kid. And that's this format for you.
One of my buddies, Baltan, he built a oh my gosh, I'm gonna forget the name of this Azorius angel lady. I think no. I think she came out in just the past Zendikar set, Zendikar Rising, something of the Seagate, or
is that the new Lavinia?
it maybe not Lavinia.
No, it's not Lavinia.
Because that's Ravnica.
Yeah.
Oh shit, I cannot remember her name right now. But
you're gonna make me look it up because I hate not having the card name. Let's see.
I think it was Zendikar.
Yeah,
Rising?
Linvala.
Linvala.
The Seagate.
Yes.
There you go. I was
All right.
close with Lavinia.
Yeah, it was an L.
Yes. There's a V in there somewhere.
Yeah. No, but he built a flag bearer tribal with Linvala as the commander, and
flag bearers out of like
out of
invasion and apocalypse.
Yeah. Because there's only like there's only really like what 2 or 3 flag bearers or something in those colors. But he built it so he could like. He would get a flag bearer out and make sure his other creatures would have flag bearer of I can't remember what cards they all were, and it's like it's really crappy deck, right? But just the idea of it is so much fun, and like if he can pull it off, I'm like, fucking bravo, that's awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you just sparked such nostalgia for me because right around Invasion was where I started playing constructed formats, and I remember the flag bearers so fondly that I want to see them come back in some way, shape, or form.
It would be nice.
I'm gonna tweet out and I'm gonna be like, bring back flag bearers because
right, yeah.
It's like that mechanic is so unexplored as well. Like a card that has to be targeted, as opposed to a card that can't be targeted. I want to see more of that.
They're starting to bring back phasing. I mean, I never thought I'd see phasing again, and then they printed Teferi's Protection. I'm like, okay, maybe that's the last time we'll see it. Nope, they started making more. I'm like, what?
Yeah, well, it's evergreen now because we're seeing it in Adventures in the Forgotten Realms.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Who knows?
Then if they can bring back phasing, they can bring back banding. They can do it. They can bring back banding. All right.
No, Wizards, if you're watching this, don't bring back banding.
Oh, I've already had Gavin on the podcast, and I think I told him bring back banding because I told him about my Aisha Tanaka deck that I had one time. It was banding and phasing. It was the worst deck, but it was so much fun. Where I'd get like what I can't remember some of the card names, but I could like target someone's creature, whatever, phase it out, all that stuff. Like, yeah, you're 15/15, whatever, phased out, motherfucker.
That's the let me bring up the Oracle ruling deck.
You're right. And it was such a terrible deck, but it was just so funny to play banding and then just people be like, what the fuck does that do?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, wow. And oh god, I remember like Benelish Hero was one of the first cards I ever opened as well, and it's like a white 1/1 for 1 with banding. And as amazing. A kid, I was so frustrated by it. I was like, I am never playing this. I don't understand banding, and I'm never going to.
Oh yeah, like once you understand, like banding is actually pretty simple to understand, but the rulings that they typed out for it originally were just the most confusing shit ever. Like, what? It's simply put, all right, everyone attacks as one group. You choose, like, if your opponent decides to block, you choose who they block. That's about it. And then, and the thing is, you'd want to give everybody trample so you could get the trample damage over.
Yeah, from everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see a rules revisit on something like banding.
I don't think it'll
I know that
ever
there are a
come
few
back,
advocates
but
of it out there.
yeah. Because I think I saw it one time in one of Morrow's old Storm articles where he rates like mechanics and all that
Storm
stuff.
scale.
Yeah, the Storm scale. And I think it was in one of his articles, and he said like it'll probably never come back. I'm like, that's what you said about Storm, and yet they just made Storm again in Modern Horizons 2.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Yeah,
come on.
there is so much on that Storm scale, which they said, hey, this isn't coming back.
Right.
That has come back already, that nothing is off the table
All right.
at this point.
People say, when Wizards breaks the reserve list, that's when, shit's gone down the, like, oh, shit's getting serious. No, shit's getting serious when they bring back banding. They're like, oh, fuck, Hasbro was, like, juicing them of money. They...
Yeah, that's the break glass in case of emergency.
Yes.
Right there.
Maybe we'll see banding when they do the Warhammer 40K set. Ooh.
that came to mind because like I see like vehicles almost as pseudo banding as well, because it's like you add a creature to another creature to crew and then it gets through, and it's still only one creature, but it's still like turning a low power into a higher power to get across. So maybe vehicles are like the fixed banding, and we're definitely going to see that when they do like the Warhammer crossover.
Oh, dude,
there's no way that they don't give us like a dreadnought or something,
right? like I don't know a lot about Warhammer 40K, but I know at least like some of the basics of it. But I have to say, vehicles have probably been one of my favorite mechanics that they've done in the past like decade, where it was just such a unique mechanic where, oh, you want your Gishath to crew a train? Hell yeah, Dino Train go.
Yep.
Freaking great. The one thing that also blew my mind when I had Gavin on was I straight up asked him, like, how have you guys not run out of ideas yet? Like, it's you guys are going over 25 years or whatever, and you get
26, yeah.
It's 26, and you guys still haven't run out of ideas. Like, how is that possible? And he just said he just sort of like smiled and just said, you just wait, we still have like 10 more years of design that we have not even explored yet. And I'm like, how the fuck? Like when Sagas came out, I thought Sagas were fucking amazing as a design. Like,
oh yeah,
that, like, they're freaking great. And now, with the Adventures of Forgotten Realms, the class enchantments,
yes,
those
blew my mind. That was for me like
fucking loved
clearly
it.
They have a lot up their sleeve when it's like level up on an enchantment. Is that there's a lot that they can do with like the one-off mechanics that they used previously, and just use them in a different way that is enough to just add such a fresh take on the entire game that I love it. And they're pushing so many boundaries with these mechanics, and even the parasitic mechanics that we're seeing, like venturing into a dungeon here in Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. Are we likely to see it outside of this set? Maybe if we do another D&D themed set.
Which
but
they
imagine
fucking
what
better.
we do with which they better, because they haven't even plumbed the entire mine of ideas in D&D right now.
Yeah, cause it's just Forgotten Realms. They could do Dragonlance, they can do Eberron, Spelljammer.
Spelljammers. Oh yeah, don't get me started. I would love to see Magic in space. I really
oh my
would.
God. Shit, I'd even take I know this would never happen, but I'd love to see even like a Magic Pathfinder, Magic Starfinder.
Exactly. I want to see them push the envelope, and I want to see like a setting that's between the planes, like in the Blind Eternities kind of thing, in a Spelljammer style. Like, are there ships out there that navigate the Blind Eternities? Like, come on, how is that not a concept that we've seen already? Right? But like there are so many mechanics that they've used just as one-offs in like one set or one block that I can't wait to see them bring back with new twists on them. I've always said I want to see energy come back. I want to see energy come back, and I want to see it come back with a vengeance as well.
Not as broken as it was before. I mean,
depending on what you can do with it, depending on how you gain energy, like there were like very clearly some offenders, Aetherworks Marvel, when it comes to energy, but the rest of it was pretty well balanced and pretty well suited.
Yeah, I'd have to say,
what they can do with that again.
Electrostatic Pummeler wasn't too punishing because easy to remove, but Aetherworks Marvel was a pain in the ass.
Right. Well, maybe they don't bring it back in a standard set. Maybe
Yeah,
they
yeah,
bring
yeah.
it back in a supplement set. Maybe they bring it back just in like a commander precon, right?
Or
But
yeah,
but
yeah,
bringing it
supplement.
back and adding new twists on it is what I want to see. Even like Kamigawa block, which is I think something that's on everybody's tongues right now, is
Oh
like
my gosh, I
something
love
that we want to
Kamigawa.
return to.
Because that's what
Uh,
got me hooked back into Magic for a little bit during my college years was Kamigawa, because ninjas, samurai, and all that shit,
yeah.
and then Ravnica right after that. I fucking loved it.
Exactly. And like, look at some of the mechanics out of Kamigawa block, like Arcane and Spirit with Soul Shift, right? Those are
Ninjutsu
some of the
and
most
all that.
parasitic mechanics, and we've never seen them again. But we saw ninjutsu come back, and we've seen new ninjas printed in Modern Horizons 1 and with Yuriko and in precons and supplements.
Yuriko was a
And
precon, right?
yeah, Yuriko
Okay,
was in the Anamatu precon a
that
couple
was
years ago.
2018.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think so.
yeah. But it's fantastic to see them bring back some of these mechanics with new twists.
Oh yeah,
And that's what I want to see. I want to see them bring it back, even if it's just like for another handful of cards. For players like me and deck builders like me, I need enough meat to sink my teeth into to brew. And for some mechanics and for some cards, there just isn't enough of that yet. So I am clamoring, bring back some of this stuff so that I can do neat stuff with it.
oh yeah. Yeah, no, I love the whole D&D set. I love that it's not a high powered set. It's allowing me to finish my D&D cubes, I should say. I'm just working on
Are they
the
gelatinous?
not yet. One of them is. So I've built a player's cube and a monster's cube, so
Nice.
they can sort of be like played, in a like four people can play, just one cube, or you could have a two-headed giant where two people play the monster, two people play the player cube, or do like an arch enemy type thing where one person gets the monster cube. Because the monster cube's a little bit stronger than the player's cube, so it's meant to be players all sort of team up together to fight the monsters and all that. And so I've been working on balancing those. But yeah, I love the venture into the dungeon because that's really really cool mechanic.
Mhm.
Love it in limited. I haven't really tried it in constructed or anything.
Yeah, and I'm kind of disappointed with it in constructed. I've been trying to build around it and brew around it as something that you can do. And outside of like uh, one particular combo with a Sararak and Alurin, uh, you can't really speed run dungeons. They've
Yeah,
tuned it to the point where you're venturing once per card per turn, and it's only at sorcery speed. So clearly, they've tuned it to the point where you can't get the benefit of several floors of a dungeon at once, or you
yeah,
can't abuse it where it's like on combat damage you're venturing the dungeon. Well, I'm going to give them double strike, so I venture into the dungeon twice as fast or twice as often. Or how many times can I do it on my opponent's turns? And I think that there's only one card that lets you venture on opponent's turns at
yeah,
this point. So they have tuned it so it can't be broken. And to me, somebody who loves breaking things and
yeah,
exploiting them, after all, you can't be a mechanic unless you take something apart before you put it back together. Uh, Having a mechanic like venture and like dungeons where they've purposely ensured that it can't be broken outside of one specific scenario, to me breaks my heart because I would love to build a deck around it. It just doesn't give me enough to sink my teeth into.
I don't totally understand that, and I can see that too. For EDH, like I'm not that excited to build a dungeon deck, right? But for my cubes, oh my god, it's fucking perfect for my cubes, and it also makes me want to build, more dungeons. Like I was really disappointed that they only made 3 dungeons. Like out of all the really popular dungeons in D&D, even in 5th edition,
Mhm.
they only have these 3. I'm like, it just
Yeah,
felt like such a letdown in a sense.
exactly. And I mean, for somebody who loves D&D as much as Magic,
Yeah.
to see that they aren't including some of their other modules or some of their other settings in here, especially some of the more recent ones, it seems like it's a big nostalgia grab because of all of like the old school frames or the old school module arts that they're doing, and not as much as an emphasis on new and what's new in D&D because like granted those 3 dungeons are newer modules, they're 5th
Hmm.
edition modules, but all of the lore based characters are decades old at this point as well. Like that.
How dare you? How dare you?
Wait, look,
Dritz is amazing.
I'm not disparaging Dritz and the works of R.A. Salvatore. I am just saying that there's a lot of modern lore for players in what is essentially D&D's renaissance right now.
Yeah.
That isn't going to resonate with them, but it is going to resonate with people like us who have been around and have played it for decades as well. And I don't know if that's Wizards' intention from a marketing standpoint.
I think
they
so.
wanted to cater to the older audience or bring in the newer audience that's playing D&D.
I think maybe it's mix of both, but I'd have to assume maybe the 30s to 50s maybe, because we're the ones who have the quote unquote deeper pockets than the younger crowd.
Well, after all, they're saving up for houses, as we discussed.
Yeah. The Zoomers, they're never going to have a house. They're all going to have to go Mad Max style and fight for water. And
yeah, exactly.
So and that allows us to,
because they can't afford cars either.
Yeah. So that allows us boomers to be able to afford luxury items like magic cards. God, that sounds fucking scummy of me to talk about.
Right. Oh god, just the fact that you referred to people of our age as boomers is like,
we essentially are at this
old,
point. Fuck. I mean,
yeah. Don't get me started. I've got a few friends that call me a boomer because I am the oldest of our friends group, and it hurts every time.
ew.
Yeah. But also they're the ones that come to me and are like, "Hey, you've been playing Magic for longer than I've been alive at this point." And I'm like,
God, how sad is that? It's like, so I've also been playing World of Warcraft since the beginning, like in 2005, right?
Oh yeah.
And it's oh god, it's so weird because my daughter, my youngest, she started playing it like just a couple years ago. She doesn't play right now, but it's like, fuck, kid, I've been playing this game before you're even born, and it's like.
Did you start her off on Modern Warcraft, or did you have her play Classic?
Well, no. At the time, it was like Mist of Pandaria or something like that, or Warlords of Draenor. So this is before Classic was.
Yeah, gotcha.
I gotta say, WoW Classic, you try to bring someone into that now, it's not a good game.
Oh yeah,
it is
daunting.
not.
It is entirely made for the people like us that played at launch and want those kind of feels. I played all the way up to Warlords of Draenor, and then I cut myself off from there.
I'm still playing. It's though I've
Order Alliance.
So that's a complicated question for me. And I'll explain. My very first character that I actually stuck with, because when I first played, I tried out a whole bunch of different races and different classes to find what stuck, right?
Mm-hmm.
That the first class and race combo that really stuck with me, and I still have this character from vanilla, was a Night Elf Druid. Because I loved being able to turn into a bear, the cat, and the leopard, and all that stuff. So that is the character that I've had since the very beginning since 2005. Still have him. He's my baby. He's my 15 or 16-year-old baby now. He's gonna be 18 in a couple of years.
Wow.
So obviously that's Alliance, right? But all my other alts are all Horde.
Mm-hmm.
So and Undead are my favorite race, the Forsaken. So and if Forsaken ever came out with a Druid class, I would race change in a heartbeat because they are my absolute favorite. So my second main, which I made in 2007, at January 2007, because I remember, just like how you remember when your baby's born, was an Undead Warlock, because
Nice. Yeah.
Like that's probably my second favorite class of all time is Warlocks. And what made me fall in love with Warlocks was going into Goldshire and Vanilla one day, and a Warlock summoned the Green Infernal and let go the because what would you do? You can control it, then you'd lose the control of it, then it would start attacking everybody.
And it'd go wild.
Yeah. And so I remember going into Goldshire one day and just it started killing everybody. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? This is so awesome. And
right.
And then I didn't make a Warlock until Burning Crusade came out, and that's how my Warlock was born. So.
Oh wow. I played the same character, a dwarf warrior, through all the way through Wrath of the Lich King. And I was in a raiding progression guild.
Yeah, so was I during Burning Crusade and Wrath. So I was like hardcore into it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Kata killed my guild though.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, this is a second job kind of thing. Like,
oh my god, yeah, it really did. It wasn't it?
Right. You
Holy
show up
shit.
on time. You plan to be there for like 5 or 6 hours as you're slamming your head against your progression walls in your dungeons.
And you'd have your farming days too. Like, gotta farm all the mats for whatever fucking shit.
You gotta make all of my food and all of my potions, and you gotta get everything to your alchemists and everything. And,
yeah. Oh god.
Yeah.
It really was a second job. Holy shit.
Exactly.
Oh my god.
So I had that character, and that character was hands down my favorite because in the days where everybody expected warriors to be sword and board tanks, I was a DPS warrior,
Nice.
and I was involved in like theory crafting for DPS output for Fury Warriors. Like that's how into this that I was like back in the day.
Oh, dude, I was the same with Druid tanks because I wanted to make Druid tank viable in vanilla, and I was so pissed it was not. And I would like try every which way. And then when Burning Crusade came out, when they actually made Druid tanks viable, I was like, oh, it's a godsend.
Yeah. Absolutely. I was the same way when they finally released DPS set gear for warriors in Burning Crusade, but it was like the PvP gear. So you had to PvP grind in order to get DPS gear for a warrior.
I remember that shit. Yeah, I remember that shit. Like having to PvP for. I hated it, but then I started enjoying PvP so much that I just started doing like arenas and Burning Crusade and all that. The fucking I remember with the Druid Warrior combo in like season 1, season 2, like it was so broken. And then you'd have the double Warlock combo where oh god.
Trust me, I can go on and on about it, but so I did a lot of theory crafting around that, and I don't know if it's evident, but when I get into a hobby, I get into a hobby and I get into the nuts and bolts of it. So like that was one of my first experiences with like, I'm so deeply invested in this, let me break down like the numbers so that we can get an ideal ability rotation for DPS output in raids for a warrior, right? But I played that character through until the end of Wrath of the Lich King, and then I started playing a Death Knight. And I played a Death Knight through until my account got hacked.
Oh, shit.
And it was right around the time where you could start playing as Goblin as a playable race. So,
yeah, that was Cataclysm. So
yeah, so I switched over to Horde with all of my friends and my guild mates. We swapped over to the Horde side, and I think I've made just about every class as a Goblin that I can at this point, because it's fun. They're fun, and I love their voices too. So.
Dude, it's so I still play WoW. I haven't been playing WoW as much lately because I got into Final Fantasy 14. I played Final Fantasy 14 when it first came out because I love Final Fantasy. Like, I'm a huge RPG nut, and so I was excited about it because I could never play Final Fantasy 11, the first MMO they did. So when 14 came out, I went out, bought the collector's edition, and holy shit, that game sucked. Like, I tried playing it for like a month. It was just god awful. So then I never played again, and then now years later, since I've heard so many good things about it, I set up my account, and holy shit, man, it's almost like playing vanilla WoW again, of just like the wonder of it, dude. Yeah. So not trying to get you sucked into it, but the thing that just sucked me into this world was the community is fucking fantastic. The community of WoW now is utter shit. Like it's complete garbage now. It's nothing like it was. Like I used to love doing dungeons. Like dungeons were my main thing that I used to love to do in the game. And then when they released mythic difficulty for dungeons, I was all for it because heroic was too easy. And then sometime in Battle for Azeroth and now Shadowlands, it just got so toxic to the point where I'm like, I'm done with this. I can't do. And so my favorite piece of content, I just completely stopped doing. And I'm like, so I feel like I'm not even participating in the game as much. But the thing with Final Fantasy 14, the thing I love the community is like people are nice. Like you will get banned if you're an asshole in that game. Like Square Enix does not play around. They like if you grief someone or you know just do whatever, like be an asshole, like be toxic, like they will ban you. Um
Yeah.
and the thing that also drew me was, so you can actually play musical instruments in the game.
Mhm.
And I logged in one night, and there's this group of like 4 or 5 characters, all different people, not the same person, not multi-boxing or anything. They're all playing music, and they're playing the Friends theme song for like a whole crowd. And I'm all like,
Yeah.
this is fucking awesome.
Right.
And so
Right.
and then they started playing Queen, and then they started playing oh god, fuck, the Rock You Like a Hurricane. Was it the
Yeah.
Scorpions? Um,
I beats
but
me.
but like it's just that sort of thing. You're just like, holy fuck, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Like you don't see this kind of shit in any other MMO, you know?
Right. And it's so interesting how you can draw parallels to Magic and Commander in that as well, because
Oh yeah.
those tools are in the game, but the use of them is entirely up to the players, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the cards. We have cards that are out there, and you never think that somebody's going to use
Good
them in
segue.
conjunction,
Good segue.
right? Well, hey, come on, I'm no amateur, but like it's still very
Oh,
interesting to see that
yeah.
Commander is essentially the cardboard version of emergent gameplay in a video game, right? And the concept of emergent gameplay is that the developers give you tools and a system to work in, but not until it's in the hands of a player do they know how it's going to be used and what exploits are going to come out of it, because it's up to essentially mass testing in the hands of people. So sure, they give everybody instruments in Final Fantasy 14, but did they ever expect people to get well versed enough in them to hold concerts in game? And
Right.
like League of Legends does this as well too, where things like leashing jungle mobs is emergent gameplay. That's not something that the developers ever took into consideration for a gameplay aspect. And it's in the hands of the players. And Commander as a format came as emergent gameplay because it's not a Wizards generated format, it's a player generated format. And now
it's
it's
amazing.
essentially a player regulated format as well. And I like drawing those parallels because that means that we don't know what the evolution of it is going to be. It's entirely up to us as the players and us as the player base. Is Commander going to get toxic to the point that you mentioned WoW is, where people are going to start leaving and doing something else? Is that the case? Are there going to be enough stomps? And it's up to the RC to do their best to prevent that. And that circles back to our talk about the ban of Hull Breacher, because the emergent gameplay of the use of Hull Breacher is that it's used in the most negative sense. And think of the RC as developers in a video game. They're going to patch out that exploit, and that's what this ban has done
Yeah. No,
to put a nice little bow on everything.
oh no, and it brings it perfectly. You just made me think that the way you describe like how WotC makes magic, and then we sort of do whatever we want with it, right? We're there to break it in a sense. As players, it kind of reminds me why I love building cubes, because I love designing cubes, and I tried to make sure not everything, try to make everything balanced as best you can, and try not to have any broken stuff in it if you want a nice balanced cube. And then I love being able to give it to people on my Discord and be like, draft it, see what you can build. And then there's sometimes people like, oh, well, if I combine this card, this card, this card, boom, I've got infinite whatever. And I'm like, oh, fuck, I didn't even see that because I was just looking at one column at a time. And I think that's another reason why, bringing it to D&D, that's why I love DMing, because I love presenting a scenario and seeing what the fuck my players are going to do to try to break it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you mentioned cube, and there's a great story. I made a commander cube, so entirely singleton cube, to be drafted as commander decks, and to be played with upwards of 8 people, either 2 pods or like a pod of 4 or 6. And one of the cards I put in the cube is Mesmeric Orb, because I love Mesmeric Orb. Praise the orb.
Hmm.
And we got into a game where Mesmeric Orb came down on turn 2, and one player's solution to not losing to Mesmeric Orb was to not play the game. He just sat there and passed every turn. He never tapped any permanents. He never cast any spells. While everybody else was casting spells and tapping permanents and milling themselves out, he sat there and he did nothing. And he ended up winning that game because
Oh
he
shit.
decided to not engage with the thing that was ruining everything else. He would just sit there and he'd play a land and he'd pass, and he'd play a land and he'd pass, and he'd play a land and he'd pass, while everybody's decks were going from like 60 to 40 to 20 to 0.
Oh god.
And he won by not casting a single spell all game. Like that's the kind of gameplay that I never would have expected putting together the cube.
I know,
That
right?
the way to win a game would be to not play the game at all.
Fucking
And
people. they
right,
they
right.
surprise you.
That led me to taking Mesmeric Orb out of the cube
Yeah.
in that situation. But still, it was an ingenious workaround for a problem like that. Of the more I play the game, the closer I am to losing. So the less I play the game, the closer I am to winning.
Yeah, it yeah, blows your mind. That's why I love Cube, and that's why I love DMing. It's like I enjoy playing D&D, but not as much as I do DMing because I love and I do all homebrew stuff. I'll take ideas from modules and all that stuff, but it's I one of my favorite stories to tell is a campaign, I guess it was almost 2 years ago now, where the group gets into a thieves guild. They're sneaking in the guild area and they come across a meeting that's going on between two opposing factions that, they're uniting for a greater purpose. And the whole goal was, all right, they're either going to bypass this room or go in there and kill everyone. No, the one of them was like, I'm just going to go in there and start talking to them. I'm like, okay. And I'm really good at like improv. I'm good at like thinking on my feet and all that. I did not expect them to sort of make an alliance with the two opposing factions and like, hey, we're going to join up with you now and we're going to help you take out this bigger bad guy now. And I'm all like, oh, fuck, that kind of changes everything. And it gets me excited because I'm like, fuck yeah, I get to explore something new now.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. And I am normally a forever DM.
Oh, yeah.
And I homebrew all of my own stuff as well. I just finished an arc with a group of friends.
Nice.
And we we ended off the arc tying into a character's backstory, and I wasn't sure how he was going to engage with the hook that I put in there, but played it perfectly. And it's just set up all of the stakes for the next couple of arcs as well. And you just love it when you see like a combo come together in Magic, and it's like, these synergize so well, and you're not sure how it's going to work out, and you're not sure how it's going to play, and you're not sure how other people are going to engage with it. And when it does, it is so satisfying and so rewarding. And I love that kind of thing. D&D is basically emergent development, the game.
Right? Yeah. God, it's I've gotten to a point now because I've been DMing forever, like since college and all that stuff, and this homebrew world is basically the same world I've had since college, but it's grown a lot since then. And we just finished a 2-year campaign a couple months ago, and we started a new campaign. And I've gotten to a point with my prep where I've got a general idea of where I want the story to be. Like, I think the thing I probably prep the most is if I know when they're going into a town, I'll really develop the history of the town and the NPCs. And whenever they go into a dungeon, I love designing dungeons. Like, just all the little traps and monsters they may come across. But other than that, like, overworld stuff, like, I draw out the overworld on that stuff, but I'm like, whatever's in it, I'll just make up random shit. Like,
Yeah.
and sometimes that turns into a story you have no idea what the hell's going to happen.
It's funny, when I DM, I am like the everything's made up on the fly DM. But I'll note everything down and I'll work it in. So like somebody will have come across a random vendor in session 1 that I bring back a year later.
Oh, I've done the
work
same.
back
Yeah,
into the story.
it's fun.
I love that kind of thing. And there's always the jokes and the memes out there about how players will glom onto completely useless random NPCs. And that's one of my favorite things. We had an encounter with a pirate captain and his displacer beast recently, and the players forced the pirate captain to flee leaving his displacer beast behind, and I was expecting them to abandon it or to kill it, but
Yeah.
no, the druid in the party befriended it, and
Oh,
suddenly they have this
nice.
displacer beast following them around now, and now I'm working that into the balance of the campaign too. That there's essentially this pet NPC that's walking
Oh,
around with
dude.
them.
Oh my God, that freaking reminds me. Have you ever seen the meme like where the party like wants to befriend a goblin and the paladin's like, nope, I don't want anything to do with the goblin, and then it shows like the paladin and the goblin like being best friends and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I literally had the same thing happen like before I ever saw that meme or anything, where the group were in these caves. They freed a bunch of goblin slaves, and there was one goblin there that was like, hey, can I come with you and whatever, and they're like, no, 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 you can't. I can't remember. This was like 2 years ago. So they basically told him to go off, and they gave him some food and said bye and all that. And then it the oh, sorry. But so what happens later on is when they go back to like the main town hub, is that goblin. I was like, I'm gonna see what happens. I'm gonna have that goblin show up and be like, hey, can I work with you guys or whatever? And the paladin was like, I'm starting an order of paladins and all that stuff. Why don't you be, you're gonna join me, all that stuff. And then I'm like, fuck yeah. So now that character's like become integral part of that order of paladins, 2 years later, and now he's like a main staple of like the larger world where he's helped build up this group of paladins and all that stuff. And so I fucking love that shit.
Yeah. Absolutely fantastic. I had a friend invite me to guest in one of the campaigns that she was DMing, just like a one-time part of a larger arc, and she had me play a kobold janitor in a bar, which was a ton of fun to do. But by the end of the night, the PCs were like, can they come with us? Can that kobold come with us? We want to hire him. He's being exploited here, working at this bar as a janitor. Can he come with us? And he ended up being a hireling for them, and they took him back, and now he's the janitor at their like home base. So like,
That's awesome.
A one-time like goofy character the players adopt, and now is like a running.
I love that shit, man. I love
it. I love it.
How long have you been playing D&D for?
So I started playing around the tail end of fourth.
Okay.
And I started DMing, and I DM'd the same group for 2 years, and then a different group concurrently for 3, and then fifth launched, and I've been playing consistently through fifth.
Okay. Now I asked because I wonder if you've noticed this playing, because when I first started DMing, we were actually playing a homebrew RPG for the longest time that me and my friend came up with. It was an offshoot of D&D. It was sort of like D&D meets Final Fantasy, where instead of like you pick a class, like you have a job class and you can mix and match the job classes. Like, okay, you want to be a cleric, right? Okay, cool. You can like go 2 levels into cleric, then you want to be a badass ninja. Okay, cool, awesome. And you'll get like all these abilities that mix and match with each other. And but so we DM that, and what I've noticed like over the years, and then I went to D&D 5th when it came out, because no one wanted to play 4th edition around me. It was all like 3.5, and at the time,
so bloated by the end of the lifespan for 4th. Yeah.
Well, even 3.5. Like when we were trying to look at 3.5, like by the time that I started getting back into D&D, because I started with 2nd when I was a kid, like a little kid, and I just went by whatever my DM said because I didn't know any better. I was too young. But at the time, we didn't want to get into 3.5 because there was so much shit for it. We're like, we don't even know where to start, right? Yeah. But what I've noticed when we were younger, it's like, holy shit, all my friends and I, we were all murder hobos. And I've noticed as we've gotten older, it's more of, I mean, you need to still get your murder hobo tendencies, stuff, but it's more like, let's role play it out, let's talk it out, let's try to be diplomatic and all that stuff. Have you noticed similar, or?
Yes, and I think that is player familiarity and their comfort in role playing and being in game. And for people coming from other systems or from other experiences like video games, where like literally in video games the only thing that you do is kill stuff, right?
Hmm.
So getting somebody into D&D that's coming from something like WoW, like we talked about, where there are role playing elements, but basically you're still just there to kill as much stuff as possible.
Yeah.
Uh, you you're immediately your first instinct is everything's a loot pinata, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna kill something, and like either XP is gonna come out of it, or they're gonna drop some gold, or an item, or whatever it is, and that's what everybody trends towards. But then the more comfortable you get playing, and the more you explore the system, the more you're able to determine like there's a story to be told here, as opposed to there are things to be killed here.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I see with new players versus veteran players, is that
I can
new
see that. Yeah.
players, yeah, new players are the ones that like, I'm playing an orc barbarian. Her favorite thing to do is to sharpen her weapons and kill things, versus my character's a bard who was betrayed by his platoon, and is now out seeking revenge on the man who sold him out to his enemy, and caused a massacre of civilians, right?
Oh man.
Like
Yeah.
that, like
It.
those kind of things are like what you see
Yeah.
on like a player progression scale.
Oh, dude, isn't that great? When you have a new player and they just want to be a murder hobo around, and then you have to teach them the rules of D&D, where it's like you can't just do whatever you want, right?
Things have consequence in game,
Right.
D&D as
And
well.
one
You
of my
murder somebody in the street, you're gonna have the guards on you.
right, one of my favorite parts. So a couple like before my whole flood happened, I was DMing a game on my Discord. Pixie Kitten was a part of it, and she hasn't really played a whole lot of D&D. So there was one session where they were trying to get into this little halfling's alchemist shop, and there was like a whole backstory behind it. But he was trying to bar them out of the way. So Pixie is just like, I'm just gonna push him aside and walk in. I'm like, are you sure? And she's like, yeah, I don't care. I'm a fucking paladin. I'm good, right? He's hiding something. He's bad because he was hiding something in a shop, and that was something evil. But so what did I have the little halfling do? He started immediately calling for the guards, like, and him being the shop owner, the guards are gonna believe him over the lawful good paladin.
No matter the character's motivation,
Yeah.
right? You're still doing something that, like, if you were in a real world setting, if you walked into somebody's store and pushed them out of the way, they're calling the cops on you, right?
Oh,
and,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it takes a lot for people to realize that, like, even though this is a fantasy setting, like, there are bounds to work within here that don't completely go off the rails.
Yeah.
And I'm fortunate enough to play with people that understand that, but I've played with groups that and what one issue in particular is that I was DMing a game, and it was like a Halloween special that we
Yeah.
were doing. So people were out trick or treating, and
Oh,
the
that's cool.
party got jumped by a bunch of kids in an alleyway dressed up as pirates with wooden swords, and they wanted to steal their candy. And the party didn't hold back and killed them.
Oh,
And I was
damn.
like, you know that you just killed kids in costume in an alleyway, right? And like this one shot turned into like the catalyst for the entire next arc, where they're wanted criminals now, because
That's great.
there's a murder investigation going on behind the scenes that's being tracked back to these heroes. That and I had to teach them the lesson that, like, if somebody attacks you, you can do things non-lethally. You can talk things out.
Yeah.
And it was a group of newer players, and that was the thing that told them that being a murder vagrant, as it's called, is not acceptable in all situations, and that there are other options that you can do.
And I love and that's one of the things that I love. Like, I always warn new players, like, remember, things have consequences here. You can't just do whatever you want, but then they either forget or they just want to push buttons, all that stuff, and then you're just like, all right, here come the guards, or here,
Yep.
you're wanted for murder now. And it's great to see them. They're like, what the fuck? I'm like, I told you,
Yeah. It is establishing that there are consequences in a game
Yeah.
world, and that is one of the most important things to do, because more often than not in the real world, some of these consequences are not there and not implied. And to tie it
Yeah.
back to Commander, look at doing things like breaking a player agreement before you sit down for a game. What are the consequences to that? Well, nobody's going to call the cops on you for doing a stomp in a random pod,
They will if you
right?
play Hull Breacher, though. Now they'll
Yeah,
call
exactly,
Sheldon,
exactly.
and they'll be like, Sheldon, Chris here, he's playing Hull Breacher, and it's banned.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
get you're gonna get swatted at that point.
You can only do that if you're on the RC or the CAG yourself,
Yeah,
apparently.
exactly.
I say that directly towards Jim, who I know has several decks that include ban cards in them. Uh, but
Biorhythm, anyone?
oh god, come on, please release Biorhythm. Uh, but like the consequences to doing that and breaking that social contract aren't there. The only consequence to breaking the social contract in a game of Commander is people are probably not going to want to play with you again.
Yep.
Right? That's the only consequence. And some people are blissfully ignorant to that and are fine with it. Right? But some people they need to be told, if you stomp, there are going to be consequences to it. If you don't want to face those consequences, don't do it. And when they reap what they have sown in breaking that social contract, they're the ones that are out at the end of the day. Sure, you had a bad game, but that player is now going to be ostracized. And I think that the
Yeah.
last thing that we want to do in a format like this is give people the feel bads, whether it be the stomper or the stompee. You need to
Yeah.
establish that there are consequences to these things and ensure that everybody is in it for the same reason.
Yep. So one of the last things I want to talk about, I want to put you on the spot here. You're the commander mechanic. All right.
I am.
You can tune up or detune or make things fun for people. All right. I don't know if you've already done a video for this or done something on Patreon, because I know you do like Patreon submitted deck lists to help people out. How would you make Sliver Overlord fun enough to where it's just not the immediate arch enemy, and besides changelings too?
Yeah.
Like, it still has to have slivers in it.
Ooh, so it still has to have slivers in it, eh? Because I was immediately going to say no slivers in it, Maskwood Nexus.
But I feel like that's
maybe-
kind of too easy.
Yeah.
I think.
right. But it's still like essentially you've got a hidden commander in the deck in like one piece that you need to pull out and do something with, and that's one of my favorite things to do to tune down a deck is your commander might be there, but your commander isn't the cornerstone. You're going to have to grab something out of your deck in order for it to do what it does. And that's a great way to reassure people. Like, I have tutors in my deck, but the only thing that I'm going to tutor up is this one card.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The only thing that I'm going to do is grab a Maskwood Nexus so that I can make everything slivers. Or, everything is sliver now. But if you have slivers in there, I would say let people know that, hey, I'm playing Sliver Overlord. There are slivers in here, but I'm not planning to do X, Y, Z with them. So I have slivers in here, but I'm never going to attack with them. Right? My
Okay.
goal with slivers is to do something different with slivers. Right?
What
Maybe
could you do
find-
differently besides the whole degenerate? And I don't remember all the names of them. Where it's like, you have a sliver when it enters, destroy target enchantment. There's a lot of like have fear, have
Yeah.
God, not hexproof, shroud.
Yep.
Stuff like that. So how do you do it differently?
So one of my favorites in this instance is I think it's called Hibernating Sliver.
Okay.
All slivers have Defender, and when a sliver enters the battlefield, draw a card.
Okay.
So you build the deck around all of the slivers that have non-combat abilities, and maybe you make it like Defender centric, where you've got some cards in the 99 where creatures with Defender can now attack, or creatures deal damage equal to their toughness, and everything you have sliver-wise buffs other creatures' toughness. So maybe it's like Sliver Overlord in the command zone, but it's a hidden Doran deck. And you're supposed to go grab Doran so that creatures with Defender can attack, and maybe it's a hidden Acades deck. And suddenly it's everything that's like all of your creatures with Defender draw you 2 cards on Enter the Battlefield now. So you're trying to assemble some combination of something that makes all of your slivers have defender and draw you a card, and then something that has things with defender can attack as though they didn't have defender and also draw you a card.
That
So
sounds
now
fun.
you're playing a sliver and you're refilling your hand 2 cards for every sliver that comes into play. And you can still attack with them, but you're assuring people that, like, my slivers don't have double strike, they don't have haste, they don't have
Not
flying.
yet. Not yet.
Right. And, yeah, if you want to throw in the odd thing in there that's like, the muscle slivers that give them +1/+1 and just buff them up, or you've got Gale sliver that gives them all
Kindred
flying.
Spirit. Is it Kindred Spirits, or to allow you to play a sliver, or you choose a creature type, get a sliver, then you reveal the top card. If it's a sliver, you put it on the battlefield. Is that Kindred Spirits?
It might be Kindred Discovery is the one.
Or
wherever,
Kindred Discovery.
You name, that's the blue enchantment. When you name a creature type, whenever you cast or attack with a creature of the creature type, draw a card.
No, I must be thinking of a different card then, because it's not that one. Because that one was from Oath of the Gatewatch or Ixalan or something.
I think it's originally from a Commander product.
Maybe. I can't remember now.
But
I would have to look
and you're
it
having
up.
me go back to Scryfall, because as the Commander mechanic, I am always on Scryfall. I always have it up. So Kindred Discovery is from 2017. That's the blue enchantment.
I'm not thinking of that one. It's a different one.
Call to the Kindred out of Dark Ascension is a blue aura.
That's
at the beginning of your upkeep, you may look at the top 5
That's
cards
the
in
one
your
I'm thinking
library.
of. Yeah.
Yeah, if you do, you may put a creature card that shares a creature type with the enchanted creature
Yep.
from among them onto the battlefield.
I loved that card in my Slivers deck when I used to have Slivers.
Hey, and as my friend Steph Quad Nines would
Mm-hmm.
say, combos with Maskwood Nexus.
It's true. It's true.
So it's essentially every turn you get a free creature.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, no, that sounds pretty interesting. Not that I ever really want to plan on ever building Slivers again, but at least I just wanted to put you on the spot, just like, yo, all right, how do you make it fun? And
yeah. And
there's a lot of ways you could do it too.
One of the best things about this format is we've got access to the legacy card pool here, so you can do anything. And if you want to go through the mental gymnastics of how do I turn something that's perceived as really strong into something that can be perceived as really fun, you can do that. You have the capability to do that. Like you brought up one of my favorite cards, Biorhythm. And it's on the ban list, and it's always been on the ban list. Nobody has been able to play with this card in Commander ever, and it is one of my pet cards. I have a foil copy of it from when I was playing in Onslaught, and I love it, and I would love to play it in a deck. And the moment I get the okay to, I'm going to put it in a deck to be able to say it's good, but it's not ban worthy. Like, it's not a Leovold. It's not a Home Breacher. It's not a Balance, right? Like, it is something that enables green to do something that green can't do, and that's, like, have a spell-based win con. And I just want to change that stigma, and you can do that for any card in Commander. You can do that for any Commander itself, and it's just up to you and how you do that and how you become the ambassador for that as well. Teach people that every Atraxa deck doesn't need to be a boring pile to play against, right?
Yes.
Every Narset deck doesn't have to be Narset turns. It can be Narset monks, right? As long as you're doing that and you're on the forefront, you are an ambassador of what this format has the capability of to be. And kudos to you, doing God's work.
And that's why I love Magic, and I think that's a great way to end it off here. Right here. Thank you again for coming on. It was great. It's already been almost 2 hours doing this. And how about you give a shout out to like where people can find you and your content and all that good stuff, and it'll be in the show notes as well too.
Fantastic. Well, since you stole my thunder, I still need to say it. I'm legally obligated. Hey, folks, I'm Chris, and I'm your Commander Mechanic. You can find me on YouTube by searching Commander Mechanic, where I do viewer-submitted deck techs, tune-ups, deck building advice, and podcasts with cool people. I do 2 videos a week, one on Tuesdays and one on Fridays. Tuesdays are always tune-ups and always viewer submitted. So if you've got a deck that you want somebody to have a second set of eyes on, because many people are shy to bring their decks to their play groups, I am always welcome and open to give somebody some advice, and your video or your deck might get made into a video later as well. You can also check me out on Twitter at CMDR Mechanic, where I post my Magic hot takes, combos. I have been recognized by Wizards Play Design as discovering combos that they did not during play development as well, which is kind of like a feather in my hat as a brewer here.
Dude, that's awesome.
And oh yeah, I love it. It's like I have screenshotted that, and I'm going to get it printed out and framed as like, hey, this is one of my achievements here.
Dude, that's freaking
but
crazy.
The other place that you can find me is that I write twice a month for Commander's Herald as well. Every other Thursday, including today, the 15th, I have a new article going up about the mechanical deck building aspects of Commander and how you can influence your play experience before you ever sit down at a table to play a deck. It is about deck building towards your goal and including necessities in your deck, why they're necessities, and how that changes from deck to deck, use to use, and person to person, and play group to play group. It's called Mechanical Engineering. Please check it out. It's a ton of fun, and I love doing that as well.
It's awesome. It sounds...
Zuby, thank you so much for having me on.
I don't know. It's great. Great. It sounds very mechanically unique. Yes. But no, thank you again for coming on. It's great. We got to get a game of Commander in and all that. Yeah. And I'm trying to stream more, and especially with this whole shit with the flood, I'm gonna try to stream some more because it'd be like, hey, try to raise some money and all that stuff. But yeah, we'll figure something out. And
absolutely, let me know. I am happy to join in, jam some games.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, and hope you have a great night. All right.
Thank you very much, Zuby.
Hey everybody, and thank you all for listening and watching out there. I appreciate every single one of you. Just a reminder, we are now sponsored by Alter Sleeves. Hopefully before the end of the year, we are going to have our own brand of Alter Sleeves. The artist I'm working on, or I'm working with, I'm trying to think of a design that I want to do, and then they'll probably be either Patreon exclusive or giveaways, something like that. I got to figure out the logistics of it. We are getting some Patreon exclusive tokens, so be sure to sign up for the Patreon at patreon.com/magicwithzuby. And yeah, and also cardsphere.com. Best place to buy, trade, and sell your Magic singles and sealed product, as my kitty's just like, why aren't you petting me right now? So hope you all really enjoyed having Chris on the show. I know I did. Hope you all really enjoyed listening and watching. And I hope you all have a great day. And you all are awesome. Thank you.